ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وقنا عذاب القبر ربنا تقبل منا رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربي يسر ولا تعسر وتمم علينا بالخير أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا okay, O you who believe very simple إذا تداينتم بدين إلى أجل مسمى. So if there's when there's a loan payment to be made and there's a fixed date for it, if someone borrows a loan from another person and they have decided upon a fixed date upon on which by which the loan is to be paid, ila ajalim musamma, if there is a fixed date for it, faktubuhu, then write it down. Wal yaktub bainakum katibun bil adl, right? And so wal yaktub, and let that wal yaktub bainakum, let someone from among you, from among someone katibun bil adl, to write these clauses down, the details of the loan, and bil adl, injustice. Now what this means is back then what people would do is they'll two parties, right? If one is the borrower of the loan and the other one's giving the loan, so they'll approach a third person for obvious reasons, even if other than just the fact that this third person is literate, and knows how to read and write, which was not common among the Arabs. Just even if both of them are literate, there's really high chance that if one of them was to write it, there'll be some level of injustice or biasness. So they'll usually approach a third person, and this third person was always very literate and knew how to read and write. And what would happen is this, because he, sometimes or most of the times this person was the only among the three that knew how to read and write, they'll put something shady in. They'll make some clauses or they make the details of the loan favorable towards one side or towards one person. So this is why Allah says bil adl, do it in justice. Do not to just be just. Do not create unfairness or whatever. Wala ya'ba katibun an yaktub. Right? So now Allah says wala ya'ba, do not refuse. Do not refuse what? Do not, if this Allah's talking about talking to those who are literate, like if you were to be approached by two people to write down like the details of this loan, to be this third person to right nowadays we have lawyers, right? And you can kind of see how going back to what I previously said about writing the the details of the loan in injustice. Nowadays what we'll have is the lawyers will write fine print in really small fonts that's really easy to miss, and even if you do even if you do not miss it, it's written in such it's written in English. Not everyone reads English, and even if you don't know English, it's written in such technical English that you do not understand this English. Like it's like there's no way of really understanding, and it's in such technical terms that anyone just reading it, he'll be exhausted just trying to read it and trying to understand this and that clause. At the end he'll just think and say just show me where to sign. And so we kind of see how this practice still applies today. This verse still applies today. This you know how being exploiting out of being knowledgeable, exploiting being knowledgeable still takes place today. And so over here Allah says wala ya'ba. He's talking to those who are literate, that if you know how to read and write, and two people approach you and ask you to write down the details of the loan, you must not refuse. It's a command by Allah. Wala ya'ba katibun an yaktub, right? To write down the details of the scribe, the details of the loan, kama allamahu Allah, because as Allah's taught him this knowledge of how to read and write. Nowadays we especially us, we are among we're not only literate, but we're also fortunate enough to be among a community or be surrounded by people who are also literate. But back then people weren't, and so Allah told wala ya'ba, do not refuse. And this also doesn't just apply to reading and writing, or in the scenario of loan payments. Like it could be maybe I don't know, like interior design or something, and people approach you to help make a masjid or something like that. And so you must not refuse. You must not say, I do not have time for this, or this is beneath me. These are not valid excuses. You must make time for this. Allah's given you the skill, and you must use it to help others. Otherwise, there's kind of nothing that separates us, between us and the Bani Israel. Like one of the main things that made the Bani Israel what and who they were was because they only looked after themselves. They only they only thought of themselves. But we Muslims, we are supposed to think about everyone around us. And so by this we're sort of we're kind of applying that principle. فَلْيَكْتُبْ وَلْيُمْلِلِ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِ الْحَقِّ وَلْيَتَّقِ اللَّهَ رَبَّهُ وَلَا يَبْخَسْ مِنْهُ شَيْئًا. So over here it's pretty much just Allah saying that when this does take place, make sure that both people are there, so that if one party or one person reads aloud their clause, the other person hears it, and he can and someone must be looking over the person who's writing it to ensure he's writing it correctly and stuff. فإن كان الذي عليه الحق سفيها أو ضعيفا أو لا يستطيع أن يمل هو فليملل وليه بالعدل. So now let's saying, now if one of them is safihan, has now from where I'm reading for, safihan literally means to have a limited knowledge. So if one of them is he's not very intellectual, he's intellectually limited, safihan or da'ifan is weak intellectually, somewhat the same thing. أو لا يستطيع أن يمل هو أو لا يستطيع أن يمل, like if there's any other reason why this person cannot dictate the the clauses, or it can be for whatever reason, for any intellectual reason or mental reason. So huwa falyumlil waliyuhu, then they can seek out his guardian, their guardian or family friend or someone older and more knowledgeable than them, can speak for them, in their place. But Allah doesn't just end it there. Allah says, "Huwa falyumlil waliyuhu bil adl." He says, if he, he can, this person can approach their guardian or someone more knowledgeable, but they must also speak in justice. Bil adl, again meaning with justice. وَاسْتَشْهِدُوا شَهِيدَيْنِ مِنَ رِجَالِكُمْ شَهِيدَيْنِ مِنْ رِجَالِكُمْ. So now what was tashhidu and shahidain, like it's kind of like the same, very, very similar. So Allah over here says, and call for evidence. Was tashhidu, call for evidence. Shahidaini, two witnesses. Mir rijalikum, from among your men. So people that they know. They can't just call strangers. Two men they don't know, and then they can't ask them to recall details of a loan payment. They'll just be stuck there trying to remember you. So two men that you must know, from among you. فَإِلَّمْ يَكُونَ رَجُلَيْنِ فَرَجُولٌ وَامْرَأَتَانِ مِمَّنْ تَرَضَوْنَ. So if you were to not find two men, then you can take one man, وَامْرَأَتَانِ, and two women. مِمَّنْ تَرَضَوْنَ مِنَ الشُّهَدَاءِ أَنْ تَدِلَّ إحداهما فتذكر إحداهما الأخرى. So basically what this entire sentence means is, if you were not to find two men, for witnesses, and witnesses in this case are very important in a loan payment in Islam. Allah very strictly orders that there be witnesses, two at least. And so Allah says here, if there were not to be two men, from among you who can be witnesses, then call one man and two women instead. Now over here, the word antadilla. Now, from where I'm reading, some translations read tadilla as forgetting. Over here, shuhada'i antadilla, like tadilla doesn't mean to forget. I'm pretty sure Arabic speakers over here, they must they probably, the tadilla has another forgetting has another word. Tadilla here means to slip up, right? And I'll explain this entire sentence why it's like this, because when people make the case against Islam, like in the Quran, like when they say, when they speak about how, when they say how Islam isn't giving women rights or equal rights, they'll this is one of those verses that they'll pull up. They'll because for the compensation of one man, Allah orders that there be two women in the compensation of one man. But what people miss out on is the context behind this. See, and it still kind of applies to today. And that's the thing. The thing is that the field of business and trading back then, and kind of still is, pretty much male dominated, right? I mean, those there's some rare exceptions like Khadija radiallahu anhu, but then she was among the the very small minority in Arab, who's a woman, and she was doing trade. Otherwise, it was, like I said, pretty much a male dominated field. And the thing is, if you call a woman to be a witness and to remember details of a loan payment, they're most probably not going to remember. If you were to listen to a lecture that you didn't understand versus a lecture that you did, you're most probably more uh, likely to be able to recall information that you learned in the lectures that you did understand, as opposed to, if you didn't understand anything in the lecture, you won't be able to recall anything. And so this is why, this is one of the reasons that, some scholars say that, this is why Allah has said that there be two women. Other scholars also give other, reasonings that, if they call only one woman, and, she might feel a little, what's the word, like, she won't feel safe. And so by having two women, they're able to give each other support. But then Allah also mentions another reason, which is that if, mina shuhada'i an tadilla, if one of them was to, slip up, and, slip up one of the details of the, of the loan, إحداهما فتذكر إحداهما الأخرى, then the one of them can remind the other one of, the right details and all. ولا يأبى شهداء إذا ما دعا. So and refuse to witnesses when they are called. Oh yeah, so if you have been made witness, a witness to, this a loan payment, and you are called upon it, then you must not refuse. Just like how I told for, when Allah says wala ya'ba for the writer, that if a writer was to be summoned to write, or to document any, loan payment, they must not refuse. Same thing goes for the witnesses. If witnesses are to be summoned, for the the loan payment and details of it, they must not refuse. ولا تسأموا أن تكتبوه صغيرا أو كبيرا إلى أجله. So over here Allah's talking about the writer. So sometimes when, I guess we can't relate to this, but if you've been writing for a really long time, you kind of, that's the tasma'u. No, sorry. Yeah, yeah, I think tasma'u over here refers to pretty much writing for, like, to become lazy, pretty much. Taktubuhu, like, refers to sort of like writing for a long time. So, like, if you're standing there and you're writing the details of this, and you're documenting this loan payment, and it's a lot of time has passed, then Allah says saghiran al kabiran, even if the details of this, the documentation of this loan payment, whether it be small or big, whether it might take a lot of time or not much time, إلى أجله ذلكم أقسط عند الله وأقوام للشهادة. So they must then so it is more just that they do not have doubt, that they actually, they do not become lazy and make any excuses, and that they actually write the details of this down. And it's important that this be done. Sometimes you might borrow something, or like some money from your friend, and later on you'll be asking, I gave you what, 500 or 800, and then they'll think, oh no, wait, I borrowed only 100. Like some details are, it's just not even their fault. It's just human nature. Some details can just be forgotten easily. But then Allah says here that you must document all this, whether the details be small or big. No matter how much time it takes, you must not be lazy in this regard, and you must write it down. And then Allah says ila. Right after that, Allah says ila. Okay, so Allah makes an exception. So إلى أن تكون تجارة حاضرة تديرونها بينكم فليس عليكم جناح ألا تكتبوا. So Allah says ila, he makes an exception that unless if the transaction أن تكون تجارة, if the transaction حاضرا تديرونها بينكم is carried out like immediately. So this is like like the instances in which you like in a supermarket and you're buying something, so the payment there and the return of your goods and all, it's like made immediately. You're paying for something and you're getting it back immediately. So Allah says that for that you don't really need to write or document that much information, or it's not necessary that you write so much for that. Alaykum junahun alla taktubu. There's no sin if you that you do not write for that. But this is like for those cases in which again, this is all referring to the context of back in in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's time, before or just as the season of in which crops grow. There's a specific season in which crops grow, especially in abundance. So before just before that season, or in the start of that season, what people will do, they will pay the farmers beforehand, trying to reserve some of the crops and whatnot. So they'll pay the farmer beforehand, but then you're not getting the crops then and there. So crops aren't irrigated like in a week's time or a couple days time. Like it takes a long time. So for that you must document the loan payment. وأشهدوا إذا تبايعتم. So yeah, basically that, and take witnesses when you make commercial transactions. That whenever you're making a transaction nowadays, we have online receipts, and just receipts, pretty much they just take the place of the witnesses nowadays. But Allah is saying now, again, if you're making a loan payment, if a loan payment is being made, then make sure that there are witnesses to that. ولا يضار كاتب ولا شهيد. And so ولا يضار, it's a very beautiful يضار is a very beautiful word in the sense that it can be both active and passive, right? So when Allah mentions ولا يضار, right, he mentions that the witnesses and the writer, the one who's documenting and writing the loan payments, they must not harm, and this also means that the writer and the witnesses must not be harmed. So it means both of that. It means that both of them should not harm and both of them should not be harmed. They must not nothing must happen to the writer or the witness, so that the proper testimony isn't given, or maybe the writer, he's like trying to make a clause that's favorable for one person, or the witness is trying to get revenge for whatever reason, and so he gives false information. So like Allah says here, wala yudarra, like do not harm them, and they must not harm either. Do not harm. Katibun wala shahid, again of the writer and the shahid, the witnesses. Wa in taf'alu fa innahu fasukum bikum. So, and if you were to do so, it's fasukum bikum, it's it's sinful of you. Allah says, wattaqullah, and fear Allah. What you've done is a sinful act, And so wattaqullah, so fear Allah, do not do this. وَيُعَلِّمَكُمُ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. And teach, and so Allah over here, He's saying that Allah teaches you, of matters like this, and wallahu bikulli shay'in alim, and surely Allah is the all knower of everything. you know uh, Allah is telling that He knows whatever happens in every transaction, in every whatever that happens. Allah knows what happens. And it's like, going back to a few ayahs back, when Allah said that you're that we are all slaves and Allah is the master. Like, only Allah knows what's right, and so we must submit to the decision of Allah, and what Allah has deemed right. Now, going to the next ayah, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ. Now, if now Allah's talking about if you're of travelers, if a traveler is ala safarin, if is on a journey, then walam tajidu katiban farihanum makbuda. So Allah saying that if you're on a journey, and you take a loan payment, because the traveler might need loan payment for whatever reason, for most probably for the journey, and there's no walam tajidu katibun, there's no writer nearby to document the loan payment, then farihanu makbuda. Farihana Makbuda refers to seized collateral. So what that is pretty much is like, the traveler can give his saddle, or his horse, or like certain belonging of his, until he comes back with the loan payment and gives it. That is done to like ensure that the traveler doesn't forget to pay the loan, and like if he doesn't pay the loan, that can act as compensation. So Allah says that if you do not find a person nearby or from among you that can write down these loan payments, who can document it, then farihanu makbuda, then you can give a seized collateral. فَإِنْ أَمِنَ بَعْدُكُمْ بَعْدًا فَلْيُوَدْ. So like, if the person who's giving the loan, who's not the borrower, the person who's giving, if he entrusts you, فَلْيُوَدِّ الَّذِي أُوتُوا مِنَ أَمَانَتَهُ وَلْيَتَّقِ اللَّهَ رَبَّهُ. So like, if this person, if the person giving the loan trusts you, he doesn't take, he doesn't have anyone documented, and he doesn't take farihanu makbuda, he doesn't take a seized collateral, you look like someone who who I can trust. When they trust you, and they don't take any of that, then do not like take it as a trust on you, because then it's like, it's an amana, isn't it? It's a trust that someone has put on you. And so it's not like, it's more of it's less of a loan now, it's more of a trust, because that person like trusts you with your words, nothing else. Like, you can escape them pretty much at that time. Like, you can, like, because there's no legal written documentation of this, and there's no ceased there's no collateral, so like he can't even take you to court because he has no evidence. But that's the trust that that person has of your words. And so then Allah says, وَلْيَتَّقِ اللَّهَ رَبَّهُ, let him fear Allah and his Lord. وَلَا تَكْتُمُوا الشَّهَادَةَ وَمَنْ يَكْتُمْهَا فَإِنَّهُ آثِمٌ قَلْبُهُ. And whoever who conceals the the testimony, who like, hides the legal documentation or makes any changes to it, whatever. فَإِنَّهُ آثِمٌ قَلْبُهُ, then indeed his heart is sinful. وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ عَلِيمٌ, and Allah knows of what you do. So this is pretty much, this is not even a religious matter. This is, a more of a business related or religious, like a business related, more of a legal matter. And yet Allah is still instructing it on us. It pretty much shows how, like, Islam really teaches us of every aspect in life. How to do loan payments, and there's the Allah talks about like the three things you can do with your money, right? So like the worst you can do is riba. We just which was just covered in the previous ruku. Then you can also do zakat that you can give, and this is kind of like in the middle. This is like a loan payment. It's like it comes in the middle, and this also like wraps up most of the themes in Surah Baqarah. So yeah. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت واستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.